What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and I've got a special guest with us this morning. Back once again is the channel's car guy, my buddy Tommy from Car Concierge Plus, because there is a lot going on in the auto market. There's a lot of things on the horizon, like tariffs, like a shortage of used vehicles developing, and we could be at an inflection point in the auto market. And well, there are a few people better than Tom because this guy buys a few hundred cars a year. He buys all of my vehicles, and he is back with us today to talk about what's going on in the auto market. Tommy, how we doing, buddy?
I am great. How are you, man? Great to be back. Thank you again for having me. Your loyal followers, they have been such great supporters of my business. I can't tell you on a monthly basis, they save your videos, even if they're not in the market now. They said, I saw your video with Jack a year ago and they saved your information. So much love to you and your followers. I appreciate it.
Well, right back at you, Tom, because I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from anybody that has used your service from the channel. I get emails on the regular from people. Hey, what was the name of your car guy again? And I send him your information happily. Tom has bought my last 3 cars. He will be buying my next 3 cars as well. Also, I am going to put information for Tommy's website down below in the description. Here's carconciergeplus.com. Tom is a car broker, so he takes all the guesswork and, in my opinion, all the anxiety out of the car buying experience because he acts on your behalf. He is like your buyer's agent, similar to what a realtor does, but for cars. And I always found that so reassuring because I just feel like a mark every time I walk into an auto dealership. And so I have Tom do it for me. And in doing this, Tom, you have developed a pretty amazing base of knowledge about what's going on in the auto market because you live in this space all day, every day. And so when things start to change in the market, you see it first. And we've got this tariff thing that's on the horizon. I hear so much about tariffs. And it's really going to change the car industry. It seems like that's one of the industries in particular that is most vulnerable, that's most in flux here. So what can you tell me about the present situation with tariffs, what's on the horizon, and what might be happening with new cars?
Yeah, so the automotive tariff conversation has been kind of swirling the rumor mill since Jan 1 pretty much. I'm just here to kind of give you my educated input on what I read on a daily basis, right? I have no political side either way, just what this could mean for people buying cars, right? So April 2nd is kind of going to be the day where if the tariffs go through, the sector specific tariffs, it could mean a lot more money out of your pocket, out of your bank account, if you're looking to buy a new car, right? We'll talk about a little later how that is going to impact and wash over the pre-owned market. But for new vehicles, right, it's going to be that any car that's not assembled or manufactured or parted out in the US could impose up to a 25% tariff. But what people automatically assume, or many of my customers that have now reached out and said, hey, I was going to wait till the fall, but I want to buy before April 2nd potentially. I'm just going to buy a GM product because they're assembled in the US and I'm going to avoid all this, right? But that is not necessarily the case. And in fact, that actually couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. So while there's many cars that are assembled, physically assembled in the US, Jack, it's virtually impossible to find a car currently that is entirely made up of 100% American parts and 100% with American labor, as most manufacturers, they source their parts globally, whether it's from Canada, Mexico, wherever those are coming in. So that is really kind of a myth debunked, is they'll think, oh, I'll go to one of the big 3 and I'll kind of avoid all this if it does happen, but that's really not the case.
So if you've got even a car that's, say, assembled here in the States, if they're getting their parts from Japan or Korea to do that assembly, the tariffs will impact those parts when they cross that invisible line, and so that car will get more expensive.
That is correct. Yep. And then there have been notably, I mean, you probably saw it in the news, but the one company that has really kind of jumped in front of this has been Hyundai, right? So just a few days ago, they announced that they're putting a $20 billion investment in the U.S. with a new steel plant in Louisiana, right? So they're trying to mitigate the impact of these tariffs if and when they come by localizing their production and supply chains and being as much kind of US present as they can. So that's a hefty investment from a Korean car company.
Absolutely. Now, do you find, are there any models, any makes that are particularly vulnerable, or flip side, that are not affected by the tariffs, depending on what people might be in the market for?
Yeah, there are really, I mean, you would have to go down the Google ChatGPT web to find out where every single part of your car was manufactured, right? It's not as black and white as, make, model, US, non-US. If you asked me, like, what's the most American made vehicle on the market today? I don't want to, trigger any responses to this video, but believe it or not, it's Tesla, specifically the Model 3 Performance, right? That is the number one car that is almost fully assembled, if not fully assembled and sourced in the US. The most American car besides that is the Ford Mustang GT. And then Honda has an offering, which is the Passport. Like, it's a little smaller than the Pilot. But Honda, there are only a handful of cars out there that you can really kind of rest your hat on, that are almost, if not nearly, fully assembled, manufactured, sourced in the US.
Now, what was that Honda model again that you said was
the Passport? It's funny how many people don't really know. So you have the Honda CR-V is the midsize, the Honda Pilot is the big 3-row, and then the Honda Passport is kind of the Goldilocks in the middle. It's like the size of like a Jeep Grand Cherokee.
And as far as American-made parts and assembly, that's one of the most American cars, really.
It is, believe it or not. You don't, but again, you don't automatically associate Honda with American-made or Tesla. So it's interesting. Like, I had a client that, to kind of hedge this and get in front of it, they said, okay, I live in Boston. I want a small little SUV runabout. I want to buy American. I want to support American labor. I'm going to get a Chevy Trax, right? Which is like a very small, compact SUV. What they weren't aware of is that the Chevy Trax, that car is nearly 100% Korean. So again, there's this notion that Chevy, Ford, GM, these bigger kind of big threes out there, that they will be kind of your first choice if you want to buy American, but you really have to dig deep to really find out where everything is sourced and made.
So we got Korean Chevys and American Hondas. That's a very, very 2020s kind of thing.
Yeah,
now, you're tiptoeing in the minefield here a little bit. You did mention Tesla. We got the little trigger warning. That was nice. So without getting too deep in the weeds politically, danger. Oh boy. I got to ask, does what we're hearing in the press match what you're seeing on the ground with individual buyers? I mean, this Tesla blowback, is it real?
It's real. And again, as somebody who has, multiple clients a day across all brands, we don't just do high end, we don't just do low end. We personally don't work with Tesla because there's no negotiation to be had, right? If you want a Tesla, you go on the website, you build it, there's your price. So my business, Car Concierge Plus, that's the only brand that we don't work with because there's no negotiation. But in the past 2 months, there has been an outpour of clients that have Teslas that have reached out to me in 3 different cases, right? They were either in the market for a Tesla as their EV choice, who are now completely going to dismiss Tesla as an option, and they'll discuss some other EV options, luxury options like BMW or Audi or whatever. I have clients that are coming out of their current Tesla lease that have just said, there's no way possible I'm leasing another Tesla, so get me into something else. And then there's the real extreme cases where people are having such an adverse reaction to what they're seeing sometimes in the news and with Musk and everything else that they are proactively removing the Tesla from their household, driveway, all of the above. I mean, I haven't really seen sort of a reaction in the automotive industry. I've been doing this 12 years formally, 20 years informally. But this is a pretty it's a pretty strong reaction where people will call me up on a weekly basis and say, get me out of my Tesla, get me into something else. I want to support EVs. I want to support this country, but I'm not going to do it with this brand, in my possession.
That's interesting. So it sounds like absolutely it does. Ground level data, boots on the ground. It really does match some of the hysteria you're seeing in the press.
Yeah.
Now,
And Jack, I was going to say, so and again, this is speculative, but let's say the tariffs do come through and they are anywhere from the 20% to 25%. That could really be, kind of life-changing money for a lot of families, anywhere from $4,000 to $14,000 on top of what you would have paid for a new car, right? Especially cars with really slim margins like Mazda and Subaru and all these other brands. 25% of a $28,000 car, if you're on a budget, that is a lot of money. I mean, that is a lot of people have budgeted, they've done things right in life, they save their money, they're ready to buy in cash or they're ready to finance, and now all of a sudden you're hit with, again, not a 2% increase, but possibly like a 22% increase. So for many people, that's going to halt the new car buying process timing altogether.
Ironic, the car that people are wanting to get out of, the Tesla, just happens to be the one that's probably going to be least impacted by the tariffs because it's one of your more American-made cars.
Yep. And then you've had companies like BMW who have publicly come out, I think it was a week or two ago, and they just said publicly, even if the tariffs do come through, we're not going to pass along that incremental cost to our consumers. Now, I think that's great. But their margins are so large on a luxury brand like BMW that they can absorb that 25% tariff without it completely bankrupting their brand, their business, right? But again, brands that work on smaller margins where they don't have $7,000 to $12,000 of markup in vehicles, they couldn't do the right thing and kind of not pass along that tariff increase without going out of business.
Yeah, and one of the things I see a lot on my channel is the bifurcation of the economy. You've got about 10% that are doing really, really well for the last couple of years, and then 90% that are not. So a company like BMW with their big fat margins and their relatively healthy consumer base could weather that storm. They can eat that cost. Some of your down markets like Nissan is really struggling. They're not going to be able to just pass that cost on to their consumers because their consumers can't afford it. But at the same time, their margins aren't that thick either. So you're probably looking at a little bit less production from those down market brands.
Correct. And Jack, in our last few videos, and your followers always kind of mention it, when I've given advice, like especially during COVID and post-COVID, like, just kind of hold off, don't buy right now. But as an economy and as a country, you would think we would all band together and say, well, we're just going to kind of put this on ice. We're going to hit pause and we're not going to buy new cars if these 25% tariffs do actually happen. We've shown historically that's not going to be the case, because if we remember a few weeks back, I mean, this March was the 5-year, anniversary of COVID. I had clients that were, heeding my advice or not heeding my advice, and they were spending $10,000 over MSRP like it was going out of style, and not on luxury cars, on a Kia Telluride and a Toyota Tundra pickup truck. And it just amazed me how that I need to have it now attitude. Again, you want to pay a little bit of a premium. You want to DoorDash a local restaurant and not have to drive in the snow, by all means. But to proactively spend $10,000 of your family's hard-earned money just to have a pickup in your driveway because you need to have it now, I never will understand that. So you would think like, oh, well, the tariffs will hit, we just won't buy new cars. But if history kind of revisits itself, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah. Well, we do have two very different circumstances. Number one, we don't have stimmy cash flying around, at least not yet.
Right.
And we also, that was before the 30% roughly increase in the cost of living for the average person. So we'll see if people are willing to eat those higher prices this time around. Now, that's a very good segue into our discussion on the used market, because you mentioned how, your first time you came on the channel was August 10th of 2023. That was your first time. And the message was wait. Car prices were falling and they were going to continue falling. Nailed it. Then you came on in March of 2024 and said it's a buyer's market again. And as it happens, that was also pretty close to the bottom in prices. And they just kind of leveled off and they bounced up and down a little bit, but they never really moved from there.
Right.
And so you kind of nailed the bottom too. And then the last time we spoke was August of 2024. And the message was, I can get you deals now. The 20,000 above sticker, that's kind of gone. So I just want to show you this chart here, the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index. We're going to go over a little bit of the inflation data real quick, and then you can tell me what you see happening in the auto market. So, here's August of 2023 roughly, right? And Tom says, wait. And sure enough, prices continued falling. Beginning of 2024, you know what? It's a buyer's market again. And then for most of 2024, we spoke twice last year. Prices were kind of flat. And you were like, yeah, there's deals to be had. Now, here we are. It does kind of look like this Manheim Used Value Index. Now, these are wholesale prices, are starting to roll over again and head lower. But then we got to look at the CPI data. What I have, this is the most recent CPI from February. I'm showing you new vehicles right now are highlighted. This number here is your year over year change. They were actually a little bit negative year over year. So new vehicle prices were still heading lower as of February. I wouldn't get too comfy with that with 25% tariffs on the docket. Now, interestingly enough, used car prices went positive while new car prices were negative.
Yep.
0.8% year over year. And if you go back and you look at some of these monthly increases, they've been whole percents for several months in a row now, or almost 1%. So it really seems like used vehicles are starting to turn up here, starting to get a lot more expensive. And I know you do a lot in pre-owned vehicles. So what do you see on the horizon for the used market?
Yeah. So about I would say about 60% of our business is pre-owned versus new. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that because, I know your followers don't know me. I mean, you know me, and my clients that I've had for some upwards of now 12 years know me. I'm not in it for like a quick sale, right? I'm happy to give you free advice, educated advice, backed with fact. I'd rather you wait 6 months, save a bunch more money, and then kind of keep me in mind as somebody who was honest and did the right thing, right? So we talked about new, we talked about what the tariffs could mean, but here's kind of the PSA for pre-owned. If you're planning on buying if you're planning on buying used in the next few months, you need to buy now. And by now, I don't mean like 6 weeks from now. I mean like now. Whether you use me, whether you don't use Car Concierge Plus, go buy your used car now because prices will spike. It's not.
Can I pause you, Tom?
Yeah.
Because I want people to understand the profundity of what you just said. All right, because you did come on the channel in 2023, and you said, wait. And that was contrary to your personal financial interest because you make money if people buy cars. So, you'll call it like you see it. One time in history, I've heard you say buy now. And that was December of 2021, I believe. No, it was December of 2020.
That was for you personally, right?
For me personally, I called you up and I was like, Tom, should I wait? Should I wait until January? It was like November, December timeframe because I know Christmas shoppers, maybe it'll be cheaper after Christmas. And you're like, nope, buy it now. They're going to get so much more expensive. And that was like to the day when this monster rally in car prices started. So only one time have I ever heard you say you need to buy now. And you nailed it when you said that. And I'm so glad because 3 months after I bought that truck, the dealership called me up and tried to buy it back for more than I paid for it. They said, oh, we can get you into something nicer. Yeah, something a lot more expensive too.
Yes. Looking at your chart, obviously, this is your world, the financial world, right? The car world is my world. But even since January, used car prices have gone up 7%, right? And that trend is that hockey stick is coming, not months from now, but weeks from now, right? I'll tell you from what I've seen and all the calls I'm on and the research that I do on a daily basis, I'll give you the number one or one of the main factors for that is that the used inventory is drying up really fast, right? and it's namely because of leasing, right? So I think, so most people, when they hear this, it kind of makes sense, but you wouldn't proactively think of it. You'll go do your search and you're looking for a used car and you'll be like, well, there's not as many as there were, whatever, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 6 months ago, right? But one of the biggest sources of pre-owned used car inventory in the US, it plummeted in 2022 with about 2 million fewer vehicles being leased, right? So if you do the math, so usually a typical cycle on a lease is 3 years. So think of it, in 22, there were 2 million fewer leases. That means now in 25, there's 2 million less vehicles that are coming off lease that dealers would turn around and sell. So that's really one of the biggest factors. Another big factor is, you have the monsters like CarMax and Carvana, who are the two biggest pre-owned players in the game. They are gobbling up used inventory in bulk, right? I have clients that say, well, I have a really old Mazda sedan. It's only worth about $4,000, and I'll go have them fill out the CarMax and Carvana, and they'll be offered $5,200, $5,400. Like, why are they overpaying on my old Mazda with 120,000 miles? It's because they are overpaying right now because they are trying to get their hands on any and all used inventory, knowing that people are going to pay in the next few months more than market value for these cars. So that, so CarMax and Carvana and the lack of leases from 3 years ago, those are the two big factors for, why the used car prices are driving up.
That CarMax and Carvana is very interesting to me for other reasons. I won't get too deep in the weeds on that, but it involves the bond market and asset-backed securities. Kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies there. But the thing you mentioned about the leases is that pretty much the chip shortage, like the knock-on effects downstream of the chip shortage we had in 21 and 22. So fewer people leased vehicles, fewer new vehicles were made, which means now here we are 3 years later when that vintage would typically be entering the used market.
Correct.
There's not enough of them.
Yeah, people who know me personally, professionally, I mean, if you've worked hard, you want to buy a brand new car, by all means. Some of us like the ball on a budget, right? I'm a big fan of buying a car right off lease, certified pre-owned, 3 years, less than 30,000 miles. But the only reason to do that or to buy a used car is for financial gain, right? To keep more money in your pocket, because historically, and we're not talking about Toyota and Honda cars that hold their value, but for pretty much all other cars out there, the reason to buy pre-owned is so that initial depreciation hits. You get a car that's been well maintained off of a lease, and you save yourself 20 to 30% of what it was brand new. That's not really happening right now on certain makes and models. I mean, there are cars like, and when you do the math, and I'm all about dollars and cents, I have clients that will come to me and say, I'll use Mazda as an example. I want to buy a 2-year-old Mazda CX-5. Here's my budget. It's $24,000, $25,000. What they're forgetting is that interest rate, right? That interest rate, that naggy interest rate has not changed all that much. So when I sit down with my clients and we do the math and we say, okay, a $25,000 car at 7%, which is pretty much the going rate right now, versus a $28,000 or $29,000 car at 0%, which Mazda's offering. We had a client who, was totally against buying new. I don't have the money for it. When we actually broke it down to monthly payment and what they would spend over the life of the loan, it was a difference of like $44 a month to get a brand new car at 0%. And you would support this, right? If you can buy your car in cash, that's the pie in the sky. But a 0% interest-free loan is just as good as found money. So go take that $28,000 and go put it to good use.
I mean, park it in treasury bills and collect 4% while you're paying the bank nothing.
So every payment you're paying on the 0%, you're just paying down the cost of the car, and that is a dollar of it's not going to a bank.
Wow. So, I am one of those guys, by the way, never bought a new vehicle in my whole life. Fun fact about me, because, I don't like that $10,000 invisible toll booth when you drive it off the lot. But if you're financing right now, because of some of the promotional rates that are offering, you can get into a new vehicle for less money and, 0% interest. So it's not like we're gaming the payments by spreading it out over 60 months versus 48 or anything. No, it's actually in certain cases cheaper to buy new versus the same car used. That is amazing. And it's probably not going to last, is it?
That's probably not going to last. Again, going back to the tariffs, full circle, this conversation, that will impact a lot of it. And, but there are still many cars out there that are just pure fire sales, right? That, especially in the pickup market, right? So there are hundreds of 2024 leftover Ford F-150s that we were able to get clients recently in the last few weeks, 12, 13, 15, 17,000 off MSRP. There are hundreds, if not thousands geographically, of Ram 1500s that I just got my brother-in-law one, $16,800 off MSRP, right? They need to move these cars. They have these massive pickup trucks that they have to insure, they have to keep on their lot. It's taking up space. They need to move these things, not to pick on Jeep. I always seem to pick on Jeep when I come on your channel, but the Jeep Gladiator, our good old, kind of pickup friend, the Jeep pickup Frankenstein, you can literally name your price and take one off the lot right now. I've seen some as high as 30% off MSRP.
Wow.
There are leftover 2023s that haven't sold, never mind 2024s. So as long as you're not stuck on one make and model, let's just say you're in the market for a pickup, and let's say you're a loyal Chevy person, I have seen more brand switching in the last 6 months than I have in the last 12 years of my career. My clients are usually I'm a Honda person, I'm a Ford pickup person, but you dangle an $18,000 carrot in front of that Ford owner, and that Ram is looking pretty attractive in some instances.
So there is a price for that, because I can tell you, like when I go to the firehouse, you got the Ford guys and the Chevy guys, and they're like the Jets and the Sharks. Like they're like snapping and like doing choreographed fight dancing over Ford versus Chevy. And then there's like me and three other guys that drive Toyota Tacomas.
I was going to say,
just sit there and laugh because our trucks are still going to be running when theirs are dead for 5 years.
Well, and that's, that's another perfect example of how things have shifted. Oh, how the times have changed, right? The Toyota Tundra, that big, new, beautiful redesigned Tundra. 2 years ago, people were paying, not if they hired me, but people, if they decided to not use me, they were paying anywhere. I mean, I saw them as low as 5,000 over MSRP. I saw them as high as 10,000 over MSRP. Now they're not giving Tundras away, but on average, I can get 4,000 to 5,000, 6,000 under MSRP. So in a 2-year swing, the person who was paying 8 over versus 6 under, that's a $14,000 delta or swing for what was, one of the most in-demand pickup trucks in the US 2 years ago.
So that just goes to show you, and again, I want to bring you back to just how profound it was when you were saying, if you're in the market for a used vehicle, buy now, because a few years ago it was wait. And then you just went over the numbers, like look at the swing between above MSRP now, in one case, 16,800 below MSRP. And if I'm hearing you correctly, if you're in the market for used, do it now, don't wait, and also consider new, especially if you can get that promotional financing.
That's it. Yep. And again, if you don't want to have to do the market research, run the numbers, that's why I'm here. That's why we're here. Rushing you or rushing anybody into a car just to kind of get it off our plate is never served us. That's not why we're in business. We really take the time to listen to what your needs are. Maybe you don't need a full-size pickup truck, right? People, I need a Tundra. And then we just find out it's just you and your 20-pound little dog, and then a Tacoma comes into the picture because you want the functionality of a bed, but you don't need a living room size back seat. You just need the functionality of a truck. So we really try to listen of what the needs of the customers are, what their budget are, and then maybe offer up some alternative options, either financing or budget-wise.
And also, just to clarify that what you're saying about used vehicles, that is independent of tariffs, right? That's just a
Correct.
function of what happened years ago.
Correct. If the tariffs do hit, that will just be enough. So you have the CarMax, Carvana, you have the 2 million less leases. And then if you have a 25% tax or tariff on new cars, that obviously is going to increase used cars even more. So it could be that perfect tidal wave, unfortunately, of used car prices in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Now, the last thing we haven't talked about, Tom, is financing. And I want to bring up this article that I spotted in Axios I guess it's about 2 weeks ago now. Americans are behind on car payments at a record level. And this Axios article is talking about subprime auto loans. And you can see in this chart here, let's see if I can make it a little bigger, 60 plus day delinquencies for subprime, which is, I believe, a credit score below 650. Or don't quote me on the number, but your lower credit borrowers, even higher than it was during the cash for clunkers days in the GFC.
Yep.
So what are you seeing as far as financing goes for people? Is it harder to get a loan because of these delinquencies on the rise?
So two things, right? So it really comes down to people now have the highest car payments than historically ever before, right? I heard, and when I, recite these stats, it's not, I don't have notes or anything. It's just, I read a lot, right? I read something that the average, not to pick on Ford, the average Ford F-150 pickup truck owner, their payment was $990 a month for a car payment. That is your average. That's not your high-end Ford Raptors. That is it's not a matter. So this is, my clients know this is like a Tom phrase, right? It's not a matter of can you afford it? It's do you want to afford it? Do you want to spend $1,000 a month on a run-of-the-mill pickup truck? It's not a rare sports car. If you need it for your business, that's one thing. But again, most people do not need full-size pickup trucks for their daily life, right? And what they're running into is now, $1,000 a month payment. People are, like you said, they're not able to make that payment. Things have changed. The cost of goods have gone up. I mean, silly things like kids' braces are now $6,000 versus $4,400 a year ago. I mean, those daily life expenditures that you wouldn't have really thought maybe could come true 2 years ago when you got this monster pickup truck for $1,000 a month. You were wishing that you had that extra $500 or $600 a month to do something with for real life family money, right? We're not talking about extravagant vacations, and we're talking about like paying your tax bill, which is, going to go up, paying your gas and water bill, which has gone up, your food bill, all those, life occurrences that, again, those few extra $100 a month are really starting to affect people.
So are you finding that more people are getting turned away at the financing window at the dealership versus say a year ago?
Yeah. So you know how I feel about credit scores, right? Credit scores, not that they always weren't important. They are, from what I've seen, we're at the most critical impasse of having a good credit score for the first time in the last 10 years, right? Gone are the days of, I can have a 670 credit score and still get approved for a lease without a cosigner. You still can get approved for a lease, but a 720, let's say, is tier 1. That's going to be your lease payment. A 680 or a 670, it used to bump it down from tier 1 to tier 2. You're now going tier 1 to tier 4. So that 50, 60 point credit gap, and it sounds like, tier 1 to tier 4, what does that mean? When you equate it to lease payments, that's about an $80 a month difference, right? So do the math. So you want to lease a car, your budget is $300 a month. If you have a tier 1 score, you can get that car for $300 a month. If you have a 670, you're going to be paying $380 a month for that same car versus $300. And again, people don't like to do that. People like to think in terms of monthly numbers, right? The way I look at it is $80 a month on a 36-month lease. That's $2,000 more over the course of those 3 years. So again, I don't help with repairing credit, but whatever you can do to get your credit score in tip-top shape, especially, knowing what can be coming down the pike with the economy and everything else, whether you're buying a home, a car, you're going to be applying for college loans, home renovations, whatever it is, PSA to get that credit score as high as humanly possible.
And you hit the nail on the head there when you mentioned college loans, because for years student loans have not really been a thing, right? They've been sitting out there. Nobody's been making their payments. We've been questioning, are they going to get forgiven or aren't they? They're going to start hitting credit scores any day now.
Correct.
If you haven't made a payment in 5 years, you're going to have a hard time getting yourself into a car.
You have a $180,000 student loan. Your debt to income ratio is completely shattered in the matter of a few days.
Yep. Well, Tommy, we typically end every show with a couple of Tom's little car buying tips, right? Let me flash your website one more time, because again, guys, this is not a paid advertisement or anything like that. I have no interest in this. I use this service personally because I just think it's a fantastic deal. That's carconciergeplus.com. Now, a lot of guys are like car guys that follow my channel. They like to do their own. They like to make their own deals and everything. So we usually end the show with Tom giving a couple of tips on how to save yourself some money in the dealership, how to conduct the duel with the swordsman in a silk tie. I always mention the silk tie when talking about car salesmen because they creep me out. Sorry, no offense to any car salesmen who are watching.
They're not all bad, right? And these my tips have not really changed over the last 10 years, Jack. They knowledge is power and research is king. If you are out with your significant other on a Saturday at a park, out to dinner, and you say, "Hey, there's a car dealership. Maybe we'll go in and take a look at cars." You're done. You are ready, behind the 8 ball, hang up the cleats. The game is over, right? You need to do even more so than ever before with all these changing factors and lease interest rates and money factors. And you need to become an automotive expert if you're not going to hire somebody to do it for you. There are many people. I mean, you have a lot of followers that love doing this, and they will call me at the end and say, "Here's the price that I got. What do you think?" I can't tell you how many people I've said, I've given free advice to and said, "You have a pretty aggressive deal. You must have done a lot of research." And they tell me, "Yeah, I've been doing research for 2 months and I've been going every Saturday." And that seems overwhelming to me. But research is king. It amazes me how people will do hours of research on a Ninja blender on Amazon, but they will make a $45,000 car purchase on a whim on a sunny Saturday, right? So it's like anything else. Do the research on the make and model, negotiate it and shop it around to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different car dealers. Find out what all the hidden rebates are. Find out if you're eligible for military, first responder, your spouse is a teacher, you have a Costco membership, you have a competing brand in the house. It's called Competitive Lease Cash or Competitive Conquest. A lot of people don't know if you have that Chevy truck, Ford will incentivize you with an extra $1,000 just for having a Chevy in the house. You don't have to get rid of it. You don't have to trade it in. So that is really my number one tip, Jack. And it's really not that profound, but please do not buy a car on a whim. Do the amount of research. If you're not going to use me or a company like mine, do the research, because if not, it really can cost your family thousands and thousands of dollars. We're not talking about like a $3 Wawa 7-Eleven quick impulse buy here. Like, we're talking about real family money that you could be, pissing away. Pardon my French.
I always have you end with these tips because they're, number one, thanks for the tip. They're so good. Like that competitive conquest thing, fantastic information. The average person's never going to come up with that on their own. And so, yeah, you're helping people, you're giving them this information, but at the same time, it makes a perfect case for why your service is worth every penny. And that's exactly why I use you, because you have this stuff, you do this all day, and you save me so much time, so much money, anxiety, and little things like recalls that you know about. And, I was buying a vehicle once and you're like, there's 2 open recalls on this vehicle. Get that taken care of before you drive it off the lot. Like, that could have ruined a week of my life just because something would have broken and I would have had to make appointments and take it in there. And you just had it taken care of before I even left the lot. So
I appreciate the support of all your followers. They've been amazing over the last few years, and I'm always here as a resource.
And once again, guys, I'll flash it one more time on the screen. That's carconciergeplus.com. There's a contact form there. If you fill that out, you let them know your contact information, what you're looking for. Tom's number is also up there. worth every penny if you're in the market for a car. Thanks again, Tom, for everything you do for the channel. And everybody, until next time, live small and dream big.